Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture what we will do is that we'll finally attach all the methods to the main activity right here. So if you go to the activity main.xml, what we essentially want to do is that when we click this add button, you actually want to perform the add task method. So what we will do is that we will add the on click to this button. So for this add button, we specify the on click as, let's say, add button clicked, and for the remove button what we do is that we will add an on click which says, let's say, remove button clicked. And once we have these two methods defined, the next thing which we do is that we go ahead and create those methods inside this class right here. So what we will do is that we'll create a method which is public void, and this is going to be add let's say button clicked. And the next thing which we do is that we basically pass in the view to this. So this is going to be view, and similar to the add button click method, we are also going to have a method which is the remove button click. So public void remove button clicked, and this is also going to accept the view. And once we have these two methods, we are basically good to go. So once we have these two methods, the next thing which you need to do is that you need to get a reference to all these elements in the main activities. So you do need to get a reference to the edit text, text view, and also you need to get a reference to the database helper. So in the main activity, what we do here is that we essentially go over here and get a reference to each of those. So this is going to be edit text. Let's name this edit text as edit text. Then let's go ahead and get a reference to the text view as well. So that's going to be text view. Let's name this thing as text view. You also need a reference to the my database helper class. So we'll type in my database helper, and let's name this thing as database helper. So once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. So now the next thing which you need to do is that in onCreate, you need to go ahead and get a reference to the actual edit text and the actual text view. So we will type in edit text equals and typecast it to edit text, then find view by id r.id dot, and the edit text id is edit text task. Then we get a reference to the text view as well. So we will type in text view, typecast it to text view. Then as usual, we are going to have the find view by id r.id dot the text views id, and I guess the text views id has not been defined. So let me just go here, and let's say the text view id is text view task. So we define that by typing in let's say text view task. So then you could go to the main activity and type in the text view task over here. So once this is done, we basically have reference to the edit text and the text view as well. And finally, you need to have a reference to the database helper as well. So we type database helper equals new my database helper, and this is actually going to accept a few parameters. So if you have a look at my database helper, this is the constructor. So it accepts the context, the name, the database, and finally the version. So what we are going to pass in is the context as this, and rest of the parameters we are going to pass in as null, and finally a single one. So once this thing is done, we are basically good to go, and make sure to have a comma here. Okay, so once this thing is done, let's go ahead and fill up these two methods over here. So on clicking the add button, what we essentially want to do here is that we want to execute the method which is basically the add task method. So for that, what we do is that first we create the object of the task itself. So first we get a reference to the task. So we type in tasks equals new tasks. And now in order to get the actual task, we type in edit text dot get text, and we convert it to a string. So what we have done here basically is that we have created a new task, and we basically got a reference to that particular task, or we basically got the task name from this particular edit text. So what we have done here is that we typed in edit text, then we got the text which is entered into that particular edit text, and we converted into a string. Now once we have the task name, we could go ahead and add that to the database by using the database helper class. So we'll type in database helper dot add task. That is basically a method in the database helper, and here we are going to specify the task which we have extracted right over here. So once this thing is done, we are basically good to go. And now in the remove button clicked, we are going to do the same thing. So for removing something from the database, what you need to do is that first you need to get the text from the edit text. So whatever text you are going to enter into the edit text and hit the delete button, that particular task is going to get deleted. So let's take the input in a form of a string. So this is going to be string input equals edit text dot get text dot toString. So we get the reference and get the text and convert it into a string. And now what we do is that to the database helpers remove task method, we pass in that particular input so that the database helper can actually go ahead and remove that particular task for us. So once we have done with these two methods, the final method which we wish to do is the print database method. So the print database method is actually a method which is going to go ahead and execute the database toString method which we have declared right over here. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to type in public void print db, and in here the first thing which we do is that we create a string. So we'll type in string, let's name this string as let's say db string equals database helper dot database toString. So finally we got the method, and then finally we set the text view to the string. So text view dot set text and pass in the database string over here. So once we are done with this, we are basically good to go. So the final thing which you need to do is that you need to add the printdb method to each and every of these methods, because what you want to do is that in every situation, like when a new thing is added or the new task is added, you have to print the database results. So I'm going to have a printdb method here, as well as here. So basically when you start up your application for the very first time, the database is going to be printed. When you add a particular item to the database is going to be printed. And when you remove a particular item from the database, still the database is going to be printed. So with this, we are almost done with the entire code. And the final piece of thing which we are missing from this is the code which needs to be added to the onUpgrade method. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to write in a simple query. So I'll pause this video, write in the query and explain you guys how this query actually works. Okay, so as you could see, I have added an additional query to this onUpgrade method, which basically states drop table if exists and table tasks. So what this actually does is that if our database is already going to have the table tasks method, it's actually going to go ahead and remove that for us, and it's going to help us to upgrade to a newer database version. So with that, we are almost done with the application. So in the next lecture, what we will do is that we will run this application, and hopefully this application should run correctly, because as this is the database application and as it has a little bit of queries which might not run properly even if there is a difference of a single space. So in the next lecture, we will actually run this application and see how it performs. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.